15th, 1986. This is an interview with Ben Hull. He lives north of Observatory Hill on 14th Avenue in Buffalo Township, Marquette County, Wisconsin. Ben, how old are you?
I'm 92. We'll be 93 in June.
You really have a clear mind. It's amazing. You're really quite a fellow. I think what we're going to start out with today, Ben, is just talking about the Muir family that lived just down the road at the Fountain Lake Farm. And anything at all you can help me with in terms of your recollections of stories you heard when you were a younger man, and anything at all related to the Muirs would be of interest, or the park itself, or just the site of the farm.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry that in earlier years I didn't record some of the things I heard, because I'd like to know them now, but I've heard a lot of things that I didn't pay too much attention to when my folks were telling me, and my father-in-law was telling me. Of course, the father-in-law knew John Muir personally, and he used to talk with him, although they were different in ages. John Muir was a lot older than my father-in-law.
And your father-in-law's name was?
Was Jimmy McCreth.
Jimmy McCreth, okay.
Yeah, James McCreth.
James McCreth.
But James McCreth is a little bit it's somewhat confusing, because the old James McCreth that came from Scotland was James McCreth also, and James was quite a common name in the family.
Is the McCreth farm that I went by just down the road here in County F on the way here today, is that a descendant of James McCreth?
It was a brother of James McCreth
That's a brother.
settled there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And his son perhaps is there now?
His great-grandson.
Great-grandson is
Is
there
that the James McCreth you're talking about, though?
I'm talking, that was John McCreth that up here.
John.
Okay, I'd also like to add to the tape that Fran Sprain is asking questions today. Her husband Don is here, as well as my friend Ellen Browning. Okay, go ahead.
Why don't you do this?
Let's check it.
I'm just going to say, why don't we, before we go through the whole hour, just check it.
Good idea. Okay, we're back on. Ben, we kind of paused there and then checked the tape. Do you want to tell us some more, Ben, about what you remember in terms of the Muirs and the Fountain Lake site?
Well, I used to visit when I lived on the McCreth farm for the first 4 years I was married, and worked with Jimmy in the fields. We talked day in and day out about such things as this, and I didn't ever think to write them down or anything like that. Had I written them down, I could have written a book by this time.
Mm-hmm.
But he told me stories after stories of things that happened with the family, and what they did, and how they dressed, and how they lived, and all about it.
That's all interesting stuff.
What Mr. Muir did, John Muir did, and he used to know the old gentleman too, and he was quite inclined to think that the old gentleman hid behind his Bible to get out a lot of work.
You're speaking now of John's father, Daniel Muir.
Yes, Daniel Muir.
Okay.
And he was quite critical of the old gentleman, because he thought that he took his whole week to prepare his sermon to preach over in the little UP church over here, when he could have been helping his family do some work. And he dodged the work by settling it on to the rest of the family to do.
I see.
And so he was critical of the family in some ways like that. I do remember asking him one day after he talked quite a lot about them, and I said, "What is your personal opinion of John Muir?" And like all Scotchmen, he paused a long while. I didn't know if he was going to answer me or not. Finally, he says, "Well, sometimes I thought the man was a wee bit crooked."
Crooked? Crooked.
So they kind of considered him an odd fellow.
Yes, he was odd. He liked to talk about botany and flowers and trees and things like that. And the rest of them would like to be talking about how the crops were growing and how the stock was doing, things like that. But he didn't have much interest in something of that nature.
I see. You know, Ben, you mentioned before that you'd heard stories about how the Muirs basically lived, their lifestyle, the way they dressed and so on. Can you remember any of that?
Not too much of that, but they were very frugal in their eating habits, and living habits. And whether this was the Muirs or whether it was some other family in the community, I can't tell you. But he did tell me that they had one family in the community that the old Scotch family would bake the bread, and then they'd set it aside a week before they let anybody eat it, so that they wouldn't eat so much.
Oh, for heaven's sakes, it'd have to be dried and hard, wouldn't it? Okay, well, that's really frugal.
You have to have a good hiding place.
Do you recall hearing any recollections of how good of farmers the Muirs were? You mentioned Daniel wasn't much of a farmer. He relied on his sons.
Well, he relied on his wife and family to do the brunt of the work, so I understand. But as far as I know, the farm was carried on successfully, and they did a good job of farming, as I recall. But they were rather hard on their horses. If they wanted to go to church, the horses had to take them to church, regardless of the roads or conditions of the roads, kind of thing. And they were very frugal in their way of living.
Did you know some of the other families that, say that had sons that eventually married some of the Muir girls, like the Reeds and the Galloways?
Yes, you see, my sister married one of the Reed boys, Andrew Reed's son, and my brother married Andrew Reed's daughter.
I see.
And Andrew Reed, of course, was related to the Muirs, the brother of the people that were married. And I was over to the Reeds one Sunday evening, and we were milking cows. And they were like a lot of the old people. They milked their cows right out in the yard. They didn't drive them into the barn to milk them. They milked them right out in the yard. And I was helping them milk.
How many cows did they have, do you remember?
Well, the Reeds, I think we were milking at that time about 15, 20 cows.
15 or 20.
Yes. And several of us milking. But Andrew Reed was somewhat interested in what I was reading. I think he kind of thought that I should be reading something that was worthwhile. And I told him that I had just finished reading John Muir's book of My Boyhood and Youth. And when he said in his Scotch way, he said, "What did you think of the book?" And I says, it was very interesting reading, but I says I couldn't understand how that a boy 11 years old could repeat the entire New Testament of the Bible from the beginning of Matthew to the end of Revelation without making a single mistake. I thought that was incredible and almost unbelievable for a boy of that age.
It sure is.
And Mr. Reed milked on for maybe 5 minutes before he ever answered. And he finally turned his head a little bit and said, "Well, we that knew John Muir the better, knew the man would no league."
Now, what does that mean, Ben?
Would not lie.
He would not lie. He wouldn't lie. So then you take that as the truth, that he probably really could do that. Well, that's really something.
Yes, I asked my father-in-law about that too. He said, "Oh yes, the man was a genius." He said he could remember those things almost perfectly.
Oh, that's really incredible.
He said, "I would believe that."
Yeah. What about, let's assume John was a genius. What about his sisters and his brothers, David and Daniel Jr.? Did you ever hear stories that they had this gift too?
Never heard that they were anything.
He sounds very gifted, pretty outstanding. Did you know the Galloways at all then?
No, I didn't. I just heard them speak of the Galloways.
I see.
But the Galloways took off for Iowa. At that time, there was a big settlement of Scotch people in this community. But when Iowa opened up, they all pulled for Iowa. And my father-in-law wanted to go too. But being the youngest of the family, that is tradition, that the youngest of the family stayed with the old people and saw them through life.
I see.
And so they had planned that Jimmy would see them through. And so he had to stay with the old people.
Did you ever hear any stories about David Gray or Davy Taylor or their families, the Grays or the Taylors? Yeah. They evidently were.
Too much about the Grays. I don't remember too much about them. But the Taylors lived over here just south of the Wolf Hill so-called Wolf Hill.
Oh, yeah.
It's named Wolf Hill because of the fact that the early settlers were losing a lot of lambs and little pigs in the early day, and they found that they were being taken by this family of wolves, and they traced them down and found a den up on the side of the hill over here, and dug them out and disposed of the wolves, and from that time on it was known as Wolf Hill. Somebody was asking me asking me about that the other day, why it was called Wolf Hill. That is the reason.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I've read that it's called Wolf Hill.
But I never did find out from anyone why that the Observatory Hill was named Observatory Hill. That I never did find out. But the Davy Taylors lived over there, and the two brothers lived there, Bastet, and
What were their names, David?
David, and I can't think of the other one's name right offhand.
Okay.
Anyway, they were a couple of old bachelors there, and they used to laugh about it came a rainy day, they'd set the dishes out under the eaves to dip on, so they wouldn't have to wash them.
Sounds like a couple old crusty bachelors.
and they had quite a little money, and the Fosters over here were quite friends of theirs, and I understand that when they passed away that the Fosters inherited most of it. Well, most if not all the property.
I see.
And the barn that still stands there was built by money that came from on the old Foster place, now owned by Jim Hull.
Well, I've heard stories that Davy Taylor was a bit of a genius himself.
Yes, he was. I have seen some of his writings. When there was nobody living in the Foster house after John Foster had passed away, the house was not locked, and one day when I was working in the fields right close to Foster house, I'm going there for a drink, and I saw the doors were standing ajar, so I went over to shut them, and I saw some books lying on the floor, and I just stepped in and picked up one of the books, and it was all written full. It was written by the Muirs and the Fosters that had been writing back and forth and recording their letters in there.
Do you know whatever happened to those?
No, I don't know whatever happened to those books.
They'd really be valuable research material.
Yes, they
now.
would be right now, but I didn't think it was worth picking up at the time. So.
How long ago was that, Ben?
Oh, that is probably, not a day, between 40 and 50 years ago.
And then the farm was transferred over to who then? The Fosters after that?
No, the Fosters had passed away at that time, and I just can't think who was on the farm just for a while after that. But we fixed up the buildings and sold it to Jim Paul. Jim Paul is
I suppose Paul would be released.
Yeah, you think that
I
the
don't
Pauls
know
might
whether
still
they
have that stuff?
Have any of that stuff or not? I doubt it very much.
He's probably just discarded.
Yeah, that's too bad. So much, good material is lost that way. Getting back now to the Fountain Lake Farm, what stories do you remember about the buildings there?
Well, the buildings were over on the north and east part of the farm, and I was pointed out the place where the house used to sit. But and I've been over to the place, but I understand that there was another house built on that same foundation now.
Oh yeah.
But the house was a rather small house, as I take it. But my father-in-law did own most of the land that John Muir had, and he owned all the property, almost around the entire fountain. What was to John Muir as the Fountain Lake.
What years would that have been that your father-in-law owned the farm there?
Well, I don't know just exactly the years, but his father came onto the farm in 1850, and then I married Jimmy's daughter in 1920. So I was with the family for 4 years, helping run the farm from 1924.
Over at the Fountain Lake site, you actually lived on that site then for 4 years?
Well, I didn't live right on the Fountain Lake site, but I lived on the old Muir site.
Uh-huh.
And the Fountain Lake site was part of the farm, and so I was over there farming on that piece of property and cutting wood on it and helping keep up there was a house on it.
Okay, as far back as you can remember, Ben, all the Muir buildings were all gone then.
They were all gone in my time.
Was there a house there, do you remember if there was a house there that had wings coming off of it, 2 wings coming off?
That was on the Crest property. That was, I don't think the Muirs ever lived on that farm.
Interesting. Okay, can you describe that house for me? What that looked like?
It was a small upright with a wing on each side.
Uh-huh.
And they're nice little rooms in it. They weren't overly big, and they weren't that too small either.
Are you familiar with the wing that was converted into a granary at the Bessie Eggleston place? It sits out there, you can see it from County F. In fact, Fran wrote a story on it not so long ago, I think sometime in the 1970s. But I think, well, what I'm getting at is I think that there's some local confusion as to whether or not that's a Muir building at all. In my research, it's beginning to look like that's not associated with the Muirs, that the Muir Fountain Lake farmhouse was gone, and this house with the wings was replaced, either built by Sam Ennis or perhaps by your father-in-law, but I don't know, I'm not clear on that yet. But I don't think it was a Muir building.
No, I would doubt if it was myself, because my father-in-law told me that the buildings were entirely gone.
All the Muir buildings were entirely gone.
Yes. So I doubt if there's anything to that.
Well, you know, it's interesting because in my boyhood and youth, John Muir sketched the Fountain Lake farmhouse in that book. And if you look at it architecturally, the window arrangements, the door arrangements, the width of the clapboard siding, the arrangement, the spacing of the chimneys along the gable ridge is much different than the photo that was in Trail of the Serpent, Bob Gard and Elaine Reetz's book, showing this house with the wings, and underneath the caption says John Muir's first Wisconsin home. I think that's a misnomer. I think that building has nothing to do with it.
I would agree with you.
Yeah, okay.
Who do you think may have built this one with the wings then?
That what?
Who might have built that one that had the wings that we know of? That
I
Bessie
don't
says
know. The
was
Otto family lived in there for a long time.
Otto?
Otto. And then of course, before that, the McGuins, the old McGuin people.
Sam McGuinn, would that be Bessie's father or
Grandfather.
grandfather? I
Either
see.
grandfather, great-grandfather.
Mhm.
And
The Gwynns came after Otto's or before?
before us.
Well, now they're the ones who keep saying that they moved, that some of the McGuinns moved those wings.
Well, if they did, they moved them off the McGuin farm rather than the
Muir farm.
Muir farm, I think.
Mhm.
Because
That's interesting.
but
Well, they moved them, from what she said, from the northeast corner of the lake.
well, this is northeast corner, but no, that
Of Fountain Lake, because I went over in there and walked through and found all the stones that were the old foundation.
yes. Well, I couldn't say for sure, but I would rather doubt
You
that.
think the McGuinns may have built that house
I
then?
think so. They might have built that house that was on in Jimmy Brett place that I'm talking about. That had the upright and 2 wings on each side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that on Gillette?
That was right, standing right near where the monument is there now.
Oh, that's not where this Wings house came from, though.
Well, that is the house that I knew.
That's not where this came from that I wrote about.
No.
This came from the road that goes east from Bessie's along the side of the lake.
Yes.
Okay, the McGuinns lived on the left on that little road. There was some McGuinn in there, I don't remember who, that took a wing from across the road. Do you know what I'm talking
Yes,
about?
I've heard something about that too, but that's very, very vague in my mind. Very, very vague. I wouldn't want to say.
Did, now Sam Ennis, as I understand it, took deed to the property directly from Daniel Muir, Okay. Did Ennis's ever build a house there? I'm sorry. Actually, David Galloway and Sarah Muir lived at Fountain Lake Farm between Daniel Muir's family proper and Sam Ennis.
Yes.
So actually, Sam Ennis would have taken deed from David Galloway.
Well, Sam Ennis built a house on the north side of the road, I mean east and west there.
That's another road,
And,
that's another place.
And I remember that house very well. And I was present the night it burned.
And that one burned too.
That burned.
But that wasn't close to the original Muir farmhouse site.
Well, it was, I would think, maybe 60 yards or something.
Just across the road.
Yes.
Is the foundation still there for that one too then?
Well, I think so. I think there's someone living on that farm now. There's an Ennis Moore living there now.
Is that where the trailer sits now, in the old barn?
Yes.
That's where that house was.
That was a nice house. But, yes, I remember Sam was living there. He married a lady by the name of Stone. She and her brother John Stone used to live back in that country. And,
Going back to the house that you remember, did it have lilacs by it? You know, you talk about flowers around it?
every page is marked by lilacs. Yeah, they're very common.
What about chimneys? How many chimneys did it have?
Now, which house are you
The
referring to?
one with the two sides that you remembered, the two sides.
The one that I used to help keep up here on the McCrest property.
Now, that's down where the monument is.
Yes,
you're
down where the
talking.
monument
That's
is.
a long ways from
Yeah,
there.
that had 2 or 3 chimneys on it.
That had how many chimneys, Ben?
Oh, 2 or 3, I don't have to remember. 2 or 3.
But were they, if you picture the upright without the wings, just the upright, did it have 2 chimneys that were
No,
close
it's just one
together?
chimney right in the middle of it. And then, I think there were maybe it was a chimney at each end of the wings, I don't remember.
If you saw a picture of the house, would you recognize it?
I perhaps would.
I unfortunately don't have one with me today, but I can, Fran's article shows a picture of it, and I've got a copy of Trail of the Serpent that would have a picture of it in.
No, I've never had a picture of it.
Haven't you? Okay, I guess that's
All I
right, you
had
had
is
the
the
wings,
wing.
just the wings, that's right, that's right.
I've
Right.
never had one, that's true.
I wish I would have thought of that earlier, I would have, but I can stop by again, and then you can have a look at the picture and tell me if that's the same house. Then, the Galloways moved into the Fountain Lake farmhouse then after Daniel Muir and his family, the rest of his family, went over to Hickory Hill Farm. And then Sam Ennis took title to the farm several years after that. Evidently, the original Muir Fountain Lake farmhouse, at the time Sam Ennis bought the farm, was still standing. And then it burned down sometime after Sam Ennis had acquired it. Therefore, Sam Ennis built where his grandson, or grandson now lives. So we've got different locations here. It's very confusing to trace the evolution of the buildings that are on that Fountain Lake site. I think for now I'm going to drop that topic and then just pick it up again when I come back and show you the pictures. I think if you can identify that house for me by the picture, I think that'll pretty much convince me, whether or not that house has anything to do with Muir's.
Anyway, the picture that John Muir has in his book, My Boyhood and Youth, is a picture of the Fountain Lake, as he called it, from the site, right where Muir Park is there now, and just back of where this house that I'm talking about, that I helped Johnny and my father-in-law keep up. There was...
Do you have that book? The Boyhood and Youth?
No, I don't own a copy of it. I've had it in the house a couple of times.
So how far away then would the house with the upright house with the 2 wings, the McGrath house, be from where the original Fountain Lake farmhouse
It would be
was?
quite a ways, because this house was at the west end of the lake, and the Muir house was at the northeast corner.
I see.
It would be a matter of a good 80 rods, or maybe possibly more.
You mentioned before that there was a house built on the original foundation at the Muir's, under the Muir farmhouse.
I understood that someone, I think it was Archie Smith, that built a house on the original farm.
Do you remember seeing that house?
No, I didn't. No. Well, there's a house still standing on that foundation now. Not, I do not know. I got lost out in that duty. But I do register a protest on the fact that the original Fountain Lake, as John Muir called it, was changed to Ennis Lake. I think that
I agree with you very strongly.
I think that should have been, should still be called Fountain Lake, because John Muir was a very prominent man, and he's like the reference in the Bible, God is not without honor save in his own country and among his own kin. And this country doesn't make half as much to do about John Muir as it might, because he was a very famous man, and you get into the West and look at all the things that are named after John Muir. And we don't hear anything of this other family.
Right. Well, that's my intention. What I'm doing this research for ultimately is to write the National Register of Historic Places nominations for the two boyhood homestead sites, Hickory Hill and Fountain Lake Farm. And at the time of those, that I present those nominations, I'm also going to propose that the lake be changed back to Fountain Lake, because that is the lake that the name that's historically significant.
I hope you're successful.
Thank you. Well, is there anything else now that I've missed in terms of the Fountain Lake site? Otherwise, I think what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you some questions about what you know about the Hickory Hill site and Henry Kearns and things like that.
I'm sorry that I don't know but very little about that property over there, because I have been there to the farm and been in the house, but I know nothing personally about it. I've heard very little about it. And I have heard my father-in-law speak of John Muir nearly losing his life in that well, and the likes of that. And my father-in-law said that he was very fortunate to have gotten out of that as lucky as he did.
Yeah.
And
I figure you know Harry because you're, I don't know whether it's the sand up here or the air or what, but I mean, it's incredible that you guys are just in your 90s and so clear, and you've got to at least know each other because you're very complimentary.
I've known Harry for all my life. I think very highly of him.
Yeah, he's a very good man. I've interviewed him too. I think what I'm going to do, Ben, is we must be getting awfully low on tape. I don't want to miss anything. Well,
I went to school with Harry's wife. She and I went to school. We went together up in the school in the corner.
Did you know Jesse Duncan?
Oh, yes.
Jesse was perhaps the last person to be interviewed like this. Somebody got an oral history on her that actually recollected John Muir herself.
Yes.
And can you just maybe tell me a little bit about her?
Well, I don't remember too much about her, only that she used to, she and her adopted daughter, Annie, used to come up here to church occasionally. This little church right here beside us. And I used to visit with her and talk with her a little. But
that's the Buffalo Community Church that we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And that was Buffalo Presbyterian Church in those days. But in my early days, I was a little bit hard to communicate with people that talked raised Scotch brogue.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a little bit hard time conversing with it. After having lived with my father-in-law for 4 years, and he came right from Scotland, I got used to it, so I can understand the Scotch brogue very well.
What is your own ancestry, Ben?
It's mostly Scotch-Irish and of such, and with a slight mixture of German, and our family's been in America since 1630.
Oh,
so
it's really an early one.
10 years after the Pilgrims, so we're pretty much Americanized.
I guess so. When did your first ancestors come to Buffalo Township?
In 1850.
1850. Just a year after the Muirs arrived.
Yes. And they first came from New York State, as they called it, York State, and settled down here in Rolling Prairie, just north of Beaver Dam. But they bought some land in there, and my father-in-law, my grandfather and his brother-in-law, the two Henry Halls, H.H. Hall and H.W. Hall. And because they were both Henry, they were known all through the country here as Big Hall and Little Hall. And my grandfather was Big Hall.
And which one was he? H.H. or H.W.?
H.W. Henry Worthington.
He was the big one.
Yeah, he was the big one. And Henry Hubbard was the smaller one. They came up to Rolling Prairie and bought a farm there and settled there in 1848, I understand. My father was born there. And they put all the land into wheat. And it lodged on both years. And they didn't have anything to pay their indebtedness with. And they had to go 4 miles for both water and wood. And so they decided that even though the land was real good and they hated to leave it, yet it was better to leave it and come up into the Indian country, as they called this at that time, and take up land for $1.25 an acre that had both wood and water on it. And, and they didn't have to go far from here.
What year would that have been then that they settled here?
About 1850 they came in.
About 1850, I see. Okay, that's right, you said that.
They came in there in 48. He lived there in 48, 49. My father was born in 49 and Rolling Prairie down here. And he came on and brought him on as a year, about a year old.
How old did your father be? David Barclay was at Westfield, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
Oxford and Brook.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I know he's passed on. His widow is in a nursing home now, I think, and was living with David Anderson, her son-in-law in New Holstein. Yeah, or Robert Anderson. That's right.
You didn't keep any of the other inventions?
No, I didn't hear them say too much about other inventions.
Do you think any of the old inventions stayed around the local Buffalo Township here? Any of that stuff still around? Or?
Yes, it's scattered around the country.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it could be.
You mean all over the country, or just you mean some of it around here too?
Well, all around the country.
Yeah.
I thought that the State Historical Society picked up some of it.
Yes, they have some. That's right. They have some on display in the lobby, in fact. What, any other old Muir artifacts around locally that you ever hear stories about people having in the area?
No, I can't help you out on that.
Okay. I'd like to ask you a little bit more about the Muir Memorial Park, too, Ben, and your feelings there, and then just tell me about basically how that whole park concept developed. You hear a lot about Sylvester Adrian was more or less single-handedly took that on, but I'd like to hear what you know about that.
And I think you heard right when you heard that, because the Women's Society here, I don't remember what society it was, but the Society of Women that were interested in this historical work began with years ago, and they had this all worked up, and they were writing up an article on that, and they were just about ready to have asked it to be a land set apart there. And my wife's sister, Mrs. Audrey Cuff, was a member of that, and she was very much interested in that too. So
is that the Cuffs that donated 40 acres, I think it was, to the park?
So she and her husband Audrey donated that land across the road from where their residence was to the park, and started the park there. And then there was other land acquired from the Rubishaw, as I understand, over the south end of the lake, southeast end of the lake. And then I understand now that the field up the north side has been acquired by them.
That's right, it was. 27 acres was acquired last summer.
That I'm very glad to hear that, because that should have gone with it too. Because that land almost bordered the field where the old Muir house was.
I see. There's, as it stands right now, there's only between 17 and 18 acres that's still in private lands that at one time was a portion of the original Muir Home 80, as it was known as. And that belongs to some people from Racine by the name of Shook that still have that. That would be a nice thing to add on to the park someday when they're ready to part with it.
That must be at the very east end of the lake, is it then?
I believe it is. Anything else about the park itself, though, in terms of the development? You would credit Sylvester Adrian pretty much then with the creation of that park, is that right?
No, I on the other hand, he came in and stole the smoke from these ladies that...
Okay, that's what I'm trying to get at. It's a lot of what I've heard is that he more or less thought of the idea originally and more or less took it on single-handedly and saw it through. Is that...
No, I disagree with that entirely. The ladies of the community had worked this up, and they had it all in hand pretty well when he came in and stole their smoke. And he was the big man.
I see.
And he was the man to promote this. And he went ahead and bulldozed it through and put his name at the head of everything. And he takes the credit where I don't think credit is due.
I see. What ladies are you speaking of? Can I hear what their names are then, the ladies that were instrumental in forming the park?
Well, this is just in the old schoolhouse up there, what was her name? Just not a faculty?
Gladys Winkler?
Yes, Gladys Winkler was one of them, and she was big in that. And I don't know so many of the others, but I was thinking of Gladys Winkler when I think of...
I didn't know. What schools did you call the ladies' group? Was there a name for them?
I don't remember just what they call themselves now.
But it was a ladies' group, huh?
Ladies Historical Society.
Maybe it was that early historical society, huh?
Yes, it was.
With Mrs. Ben Herrick
Yes.
and Ella Crown.
Yes. And she was in on it.
Is that the same historical society, Fran, that you're now the curator for?
Well, I guess so.
I see.
It's what's left, what's come out of that.
Okay.
Well,
I know that we have a file at the Historical Society that has, a lot of clippings, and these women were involved.
Yeah.
and they started it and had it nicely on their hand and nicely going. So they didn't butt it in and took over and pushed them aside.
I see.
And went ahead and he was good at that. I know the Historical Society asked me to come in Montello one night and give a talk on what I knew about the Indians in this country. And I told them about my father being quite a friend of the Indians and helping them out. How that our arms broke out one time and went down across this little lake of ours to a cornfield down there and filled with corn, and then coming back, they a bunch of them dropped through the lake and drowned. And my father sent word right to the Indian camp over here at Indianapolis for them to come and get the hogs that were just freshly drowned. The meat was still good, and they all picked up something like that.
That's a nice story.
They came and got that, and how that they used to have over in the east glen of the Observatory Hill. There was a nice little glen down there, and it was well hidden from the storms, and it was deep in there, a lot of ferns in there. And the Indians used to, there was a little spring in there, and the Indians used to get in there in the wintertime and put up some teepees and wigwams so that they could, if they got caught out in the storm or anything, when they got lost, they could go in there and stay over there. And they used to stay there, and my father, as a boy, used to go there and play with the Indian boys. And my father and his brothers.
Were these pretty much all Winnebagos then?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then they had a path up over this farm, going up to the other encampment, which is on the south shore of Buffalo Lake. And they used to be some Indians that lived up there on the south shore of the Buffalo Lake. And how they used to go through here, and my father would see them and go and intercept them and visit with them. And my father was always very, very kind in interested in the Indians, and when they would come down the road with the arms full of baskets, he would say to my mother, he says, Maggie, here's some money. He says, you buy those Indian baskets. He says, what do you need them about? He says, they need milk.
Oh, that's
And
nice.
he'd throw out
That's
several
nice.
dollars on the table and run out for his work. And my mother would buy the Indian baskets from the ladies. You'd see them walking up the road from coming this way.
Sounds like your father was a pretty special guy.
Yes, he was very, he always thought the Indians got a very rough treatment from the white people. Didn't deserve the treatment they got.
Yes, I think he was right too.
And so he did that, and I was going on to say that I told that in the Historical Society here in Montello that night. I was followed immediately by Phil Adrian, who jumped up and said that what Ben Howard just told you about the Indians is entirely falsehood. He says the Indians never went anywhere nor ever congregated anywhere except down at my place when the Indian Nick was on.
But we know that isn't true.
Yes, I know that because I've been here when my mother was dealing with the Indian women and the money that my father
Sure.
left to buy $4, $5, $6 worth of baskets from him.
In fact, there was Winnebago encampments up and down the whole Fox River Valley.
Yes.
Tell me, did your father speak the Indian language then, or did they speak?
They spoke English.
They spoke English.
I never heard my father speak any English, any Indian. Only he knew a lot of Indian words because
Yes, all
he'd say that the voice.
What year would that have been, Ben, when you were telling us the story about the hogs falling through the ice, and then also about buying the Indian baskets?
Well, buying Indian baskets would probably been in the teens and possibly the early 30s. But going back to the hogs, that was when I was I can just barely remember it. I was probably not more than 6 or 8 years old. Just at the turn of the century.
Just at the turn of the century.
Obviously, those Indian baskets now, you see them in the museums, but you see.
Yeah.
My house used to be just full of Indian baskets, Indian stuff of all kinds.
You didn't save any of that stuff, though.
No.
What else besides baskets? What other kinds of things? Beads you mean, or?
No, they didn't sell beads.
Okay, that's
they were-
what I heard say.
They probably had them on the moccasins and things like that. But so most of the baskets that my father and mother,
I was thinking maybe leather things, but not.
but my mother always used clothes baskets made by the Indians and market baskets to take stuff and she gathered eggs and Indian baskets.
Do you remember about what year it was when the last of the Winnebagos moved out of this area? Remember the last time you ever saw them?
No, I have a very faint recollection of just when they feathered out. I don't remember when I saw the last of them.
You can't quite remember about how old a man you were?
Well, I was getting up to be probably 25 years old when I saw the last of them.
When these came through in the teens and up to the 30s, were they coming from, not from encampments around here, but from maybe the Delta or something?
No, they were mostly people that were going up and down the river here and were camped over here where J.R. Williams' farm was, and along the south shore where the dogs were settled.
Anything else now, Ben, related to the Muirs before we kind of make a transition and I'm going to ask you some different types of questions?
I can't think of anything.
Okay. Well, you've been a big help. You've really given me some really good stuff to go on here in terms of the Muirs. As far as farming patterns in the area, tell me a little bit about how farming has changed since you were a boy and in terms of the use of pesticides today. I'd also like to have you tie that in with what kinds of wildlife you used to see when you were a youngster and you don't anymore, stuff that's disappeared. In general, what you've observed over the years and changes in farming and how those changes have affected the wildlife in the area.
earliest I remember about deer was my father telling me bedtime stories about how when he was a little boy and sitting in the log schoolhouse down here at the corner, looking out the window and seeing a couple deer run across this so-called field out there.
Is that long schoolhouse still there?
No.
Okay.
That was an old log schoolhouse that was there before the train schoolhouse was built.
Did John Muir attend that long schoolhouse?
No,
You didn't? No, okay,
he was
okay.
down out of this, here down south of here.
Okay.
They saw 2 deer.
Yes, 2 deer run across the field. And through the, it was sort of open woods at that time. It wasn't cleared land. But that was the only 2 deer that he ever saw until he was probably an old man. But then I remember being in the barber shop in Montello. Somebody came in and said they saw a couple of deer over here on what is now County Highway 22. And people laughed and scorned and said, well, what are you drinking? Saw a deer. So you can see how sparse the deer were in the country when I was a boy. The deer was something we heard about, we didn't see. And look at them today, we're almost overrun with them. So the deer came in like that, and the same with wild geese. The wild geese were few in number. Why there wasn't 1,000th part of wild geese when I was a boy that there is today. And as for sandhill cranes, we maybe saw 1 or 2 in a year, and maybe heard them, and the likes of that. And look at how the sandhill cranes have increased today.
Is there quite a few around here now?
Oh yes.
Oh, yeah. I see. Okay.
And why the DNR wants to buy land to propagate sandhill cranes on is more than I can understand. Because sandhill cranes don't sit down in land that's unoccupied. They want an open field where they don't hurt their wings when they land and take off.
I see.
And if they buy land and let it grow up to brush, it's not going to be sandhill crane country.
Right.
And why they when the sandhill cranes and the livestock have done so well with living amongst the farmers and with the farmers and on the farmers, I don't know why the DNR wants to buy up land and set it aside for. Same with the ducks. Now they buy up this land and flood it with several inches of water. Well, I've encountered a lot of duck nests in my life. Never found any in water. I found them in my fields where they're nice and dry. And I was mowing and would see the duck nest there, and if I could, I avoided, left a patch of stuff that I didn't cut. And sorry to say, I've mowed over several of them and destroyed their nest.
Sure.
But
they'll re-nest, though. They will re-nest if their first or second nest is destroyed. Tell talking about fence rows, the old fence rows that used to have wild plums and cherries and some hazel, dogwood, nice diversity of shrubs that supported a lot of birds, including bluebirds and other things. You don't see those anymore. It seems to me that farmers are more or less planting barb to barb. Tell me about that. What's the reason that they can't leave a few spaces for wildlife?
I don't know. I think that the way things are going, they better leave it all to wildlife.
Good point.
On the other hand, I do think that they have encroached on the wildlife along the hedges, and things were much better. And then another thing I remembered so much in my younger days was the blueberries that grew in this country. There was great blueberry patches around here. And when I was a boy, we used to have these big fires that ran along the rivers and through the woods.
Oh yeah.
And a blueberry, as you probably know, has to be burned over every other year in order to have a good berry crop.
Oh yeah.
And so a couple of years following a fire, we had lots of blueberries to take. And they were so plentiful that we could take our pails and go down and sit by a blueberry bush and just break them in and fill your pail in a very short time. And now that the DNR permits no wildfires, we don't have any blueberries in the country.
Wow, that's interesting.
Almost young folks nowadays don't know what a blueberry looks like.
That's right.
And we had blueberries by the bushels when I was a young
Did you have huckleberries too?
Some huckleberries, but never like the blueberries. And the blueberries was an island just west of my father-in-law's out there, and we used to go there, and my relatives used to go there, the McCratch relatives rather, and go out there on that island, take blueberries, come home with buckets of it.
What, getting a little bit back to more to wildlife, what birds or animals have you seen decreases in, have more or less disappeared?
Well, I never remember the passenger pigeon.
I bet your father does.
Oh yes, my father brought me up on bedtime stories of how the passenger pigeons would darken the air.
Yeah, what, can you just touch on that a little bit? I'd be interested in hearing that.
Yes, and I never saw a passenger pigeon to know it. I've seen stuffed pigeons that told me they were passenger pigeons. I never saw any more life, but they were gone before my day. And it seemed that they disappeared in a year or two. And it's supposed to be that they were shot off, but I don't think that they could have been shot off that quickly. I think there must have been some disease got in them.
What did your father think of passenger pigeons? Did he like them? Were they a beautiful bird, or did he dislike them?
Well, yes, he kind of bemoaned their loss, but he said that they were a detriment when they dropped in the crops. They were hard on the crops.
Sure.
But on the other hand, he said that they were great things for people that were short of food or something like that.
Yeah. They just blackened the sky. There were so many, huh?
So anyway.
They were kind of like manna from heaven, you know that?
Yeah.
They came at a time when farmers needed them to feed their pigs, they needed them to feed their families, and they needed them, but then they moved on, or they were gone.
Yeah. That's interesting, Fran. That's an interesting report.
And why that the pigeons disappeared so quickly, no one ever knew. But the other wildlife has increased in my time tremendously.
What about prairie chickens? There must have been some prairie chickens.
There was quite a lot of prairie chickens around when I was a boy, and we used to hear them thumping, drumming, and likes of that. But I haven't seen anything with prairie chicken for years.
Did you ever have something called a sharp-tailed grouse here?
I don't remember.
How about the ruffed grouse? Is that around?
Yes, we used to have quite a lot of these. We used to have quite a lot of the grouse, and the people used to hunt them. Although I never did. I never watched a hunt them myself anyway. But there was, and then there was quite a lot of these pheasants around at one time, and they used to come around the upland quite a lot. But nowadays, I don't see any around the uplands. There's some around the marshes and places like that.
How about bluebirds?
There's one bluebird where it used to be 1,000.
Is that right? What do you think is hurting bluebirds?
I don't know. I think it's they used to nest in our old posts along the fences so much. Now there's all steel posts.
That's right.
And a lot of farmers don't even have fences. Keep their cows in and don't let them out pasture. And that may be one reason. And then I think another thing is the lack of hedgerows, things like that.
Remember the old apple trees when they were full of blossoms in May? You know, they'd just blossom about the time the bluebirds would be, their first fledglings would be appearing to fill the branches, and it was wonderful. I heard nice stories about that.
I thought bluebirds only ate insects.
The parents, when they're feeding the young in the nest, become insectivorous, it's known as, but otherwise they have sort of an omnivorous diet, and there's a wide range of things they'll eat. But yes, when they're feeding the young, just because of the increased protein in insects, they do just use insects.
But the insect composition is quite a thing nowadays too. Since the pesticides that came in, we have fewer of some things and lots more of others.
Yeah.
And I don't know in general whether it's helped very much or not. Because there was one time that beekeeping was a great thing in this country. Nowadays it's almost a thing of the past.
Right.
The pesticides that put an end to beekeeping.
How about they asked you right down, what about honeybees? Did you see any honeybees?
Beg your pardon?
Honeybees. Do you see, honeybees around as much?
Well, I see some of them around, but
Compared to what it used to be
my
like?
son is a great honeybee man, and he's been in the honeybee business most all of his life, and he's had colonies. He had 1,000 colonies in Wisconsin here, and 1,000 colonies out in Minnesota at one time.
Oh, that's good.
But he says that there's no money to be made in honeybees away because so many of them are killed off with the pesticides.
Oh, yes.
What about hummingbirds and barn owls too?
Well, there used to be a lot of barn owls. We used to have a barn owl in the barn quite a lot, but they tell me that I've got a barn owl this winter in my barn down here.
Oh, really?
And the neighbors those that take care of my horses say they see him sitting up on the hay rope quite often at night, but I haven't been down to see him. They say there's barn owl back in my barn now, but that's the first one. But
I heard somebody else say that in this week.
Really? Where would that be, Fran? What location?
Can't remember. Said it.
Someplace in the area.
Yeah.
but I don't know whether this is a little screech owl or whether it's barn owl.
Yeah, that's the thing. They have to
difference.
really know a barn owl.
Yeah, the barn owl is a little bit different than the screech owl.
It certainly is.
And
A lot different.
but the screech owl used to be real prevalent when I was a boy, and used to scare the daylights out of me when I was a kid. But I haven't heard the screech owl now for quite a while.
Did you used to have barn owls when you were small too? A lot of them, or you remember them often? Or?
No, I don't remember too much about barn owls in those days. I remember screech owls. I don't know what this is that the girls saw in my barn.
Might want to ask them if it has that kind of cinnamon or rust back with the poppy seed, look to it.
Yeah.
The white face, Valentine face. It's the only owl we have that has that heart face or Valentine face. I also wanted to ask you a little bit about turtles and snakes. What do you remember about those? Are declining rapidly as well.
Well, I don't see as many snakes as we used to, but I never took any great interest in snakes.
Yeah.
Although I've never.
Well, that's the problem. Most people haven't, but yet they're a good environmental indicator.
That's right. I'm not against snakes.
Yeah.
I don't go out of my way to kill them or anything like that.
Right.
But on the other hand, I don't make pets of them.
Yeah. What about turtles, Ben? Do you remember seeing turtles in some of the creeks and stuff?
Yes. When we lived on the McCrest place there, my wife and her sister used to raise lots of ducks and ducklings and stuff. We let them get down the creek and turtles pulled them under, counted them, ate them.
Probably those big snapping turtles.
Yes,
Huh?
and lived along the bank, and we were very careful to keep the young ducks and geese away from the creek, into Fountain Lake, and the turtles were very plentiful in those days, and
More plentiful than they are today. Then.
oh yes, I think so. Although of course I don't get out around to see how many there are, but I do know that here's another thing that might interest you a bit. My hired man and I used to take a big flat boat scow and put a light on it and go out in Fountain Lake and float along trying to spear some fish. It was outlawed, of course, and we weren't supposed to do that.
What kind of fish mostly?
Well, we were looking for either walleyes or pickerel or bass, something like that. But the dogfish and the carp were so thick in that lake that they'd come up around that boat just like a flock of hogs. And if we'd have speared, we had a flat scow that was 4 feet wide and 16 feet long. And had we speared every carp that where we drifted across the lake for 10 rods, we'd have spunked the scow.
86 interview. Ben was just telling us about all the dogfish in Fountain Lake, and I'll just let him continue with that.
Well, not so much dogfish as carp.
Okay.
Carp were normal, but we're dogfish and several other kind of rough fish. And you could spear all those that you wanted. And of course the Conservation Commission has nothing against you spearing that kind of fish.
What year would this have been, Ben?
Oh, that would have been the years of 23, 24, 22, 23, 24 along in there. And the carp was so thick in the lake, and even when we entered the river, they were just about as thick in the Fox River, but in the bayous too. And we were out to get ourselves a mess of the other kind of fish, and we generally managed to get enough to pay us to go out. But we were kind of careful about it because it was against the law, and we didn't overdo it at all. But we did see so much wildlife and so many turtles. Turtles of all kinds, the great big leatherback turtles that would be a foot to 18 inches diameter, and they were leathery, and they weren't hard shell turtles.
Called soft shell turtles.
Yes, and other kind of turtles, and they all come to the light. And if a person wants to study wildlife in the lake, get a light and go out on the lake, and just sit there and see what comes to see you.
That's good advice.
It's a very interesting thing. And I used to do that, go out there more to see the wildlife than I did to spear fish, because I couldn't hit them, and I didn't spear at them. But another thing was interesting. There was a big fish of some kind. I don't know what he was. I suppose it's probably a pickerel or something. He beside a stump that was out in the lake, and you'd get up so you get a good look at him. About the time you got a good look at him, he was gone, like a flash.
You mentioned walleyes and bass earlier. Were there quite a few walleyes and bass in Fountain Lake then?
There weren't so many in the lake as there were in the river. But you come down the river and as you'd fall, go past where there was a little stream coming into the river. There would have to be a lot of walleyes and just out of where the stream met the river.
Did you see quite a few frogs and salamanders and toads and things like that?
Well, somewhat, but not so, that they weren't so pronounced as the rough fish were.
What about just the general overall aura or atmosphere of Fountain Lake, and also, the place where the Fountain Lake farmhouse site, where the land the Muirs had? How does that look today compared to how it was, back when you were, the earliest recollections you have of it when you were a boy? Has it changed a lot, or is it pretty much the same?
Not too
Pretty
different.
much the same.
Pretty much the same.
As far as the vegetation goes, the number of trees, the flowers, all that, it's pretty much the same.
Pretty much the same, I would say. I think the wildflowers are the last I knew of them, in a way, they were just about as much in evidence as ever.
If you're standing by, we'll just say as a landmark, we're standing at the boat launch there at Fountain Lake at the park. And if you look to your left, or just across the lake towards where the Muir buildings were, there's a sand dugout area there. It's like a old sand blow. Is that pretty close to where the buildings then were?
Their buildings were up from that.
Up from the sandy depression.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I haven't, actually at the time I started this study, it's either been raining awfully hard like we had last fall, or there's been quite a bit of snow on the ground. So I'm waiting now actually to get out there for the first time in the field this spring to the actual farm site. So I'm still not certain as to where the foundation stones are or the lilacs or anything. I may need some help with that.
Well, if I could help you, I'd be glad to do so.
Okay.
But and speaking of that, the lake is another thing. If you have nerve enough to do it, go out there on the lake when the first freeze is over in the fall, and when the ice is nice and clear, and look down through the ice, and it's quite a sight to see the springs boiling up in the bottom of that lake.
Oh, really?
And for safety first, you need a pair of skis on, so that you can get over the thin ice. But and there's possibly a pole in your hand, so that if you do break through, you don't go under.
Do you know how deep that lake is?
Yes, I've measured it myself.
Yeah?
It's 33 feet.
It's to 33 feet.
But there's a ridge runs through the center of it that's only about 8 or 10 feet. And
I've been on the lake a couple of times in a canoe, and it's unusually clear, even in midsummer.
yes, it is, and it's a cold lake.
It's a cold lake.
And I'm inclined to think that there's underground outlets to that lake, where it seeps away through the sand. That don't run over the top, because with all those springs that you see out there, I would think that they'd be boiling far more water into that lake than what runs down that stream.
You could be very right about that.
And another thing that's rather interesting, that's the cement culvert that you come over there. I was there when they built that culvert in there, and they put in the bottom of that culvert one night with cement, and right through the bottom of that culvert came up a boiling spring that got right up through that cement, and that is running there to this day, right under the road, right in the middle of that culvert.
So then when Daniel Muir named the farm Fountain Lake Farm, because of all the bubbling springs, it was probably a real good name. He had a good reason, and that was a good name, wasn't it?
And that's probably why they needed that springs for water.
Yes.
And there was a nice spring, not very far from, well, the springs all around that, but there was a spring right at the northwest corner of it that we used to go down and fill our jugs with that. And but on the other hand, I've cut wood many a day over on the south side of the lake, and cutting it for firewood. And I'd get thirsty in the middle of the half day, go down to the lake and just chop a little hole in the ice and drink right out of the lake. And it wasn't bad drinking.
No, I bet it must not have been. Maybe that's
How's that?
If it was good for your fish, it would be good for you.
Yeah,
sure, that's right.
And it's a nice clear lake. It's nice water, and the water that came down the creek. If I got it where it came straight out of the lake before it got down to my pasture, and I used to taste it. I wouldn't drink very much of it, but I would taste it. Nice tasting water. It's a nice little lake.
Looks like a real clean
But
little
it's
lake.
so deep and so little shore around it. Never gets very warm. So it never gets nice for bathing. Got so many springs in it.
Yeah, I don't think I can recollect anybody swimming in it that I've
And
ever
then
seen.
of course the marl around that lake is preposterous. Big deposits on it.
Did they ever take marl out of it?
Yes. My brother-in-law, Bobby Cuff, he had a bucket and took marl out of that lake.
What would the marl be used for then?
For lime on the land.
For lime on the land. I didn't know that.
It's very good.
If Daniel Muir had known that, he could have made that land produce better, couldn't he?
Yes. That land was exploited one time by the, as you probably know, by the big exploiters. And I
didn't know that, Ben.
Oh, didn't you?
What do you know about that?
Oh yes, I've seen the pictures of the big plants that was at Fountain Lake, and very big pictures that would be 2 feet in length of the big factories producing cement and stuff out of the bottom of the bridge, out of the bottom of Fountain Lake.
Where could a person see pictures like that?
I don't know, but my father-in-law used to have a lot of pictures in his files. And I got those when the house burned. It Robert burned it.
I see.
But
That's too bad. All that
there's a
stuff
big
gets lost.
company out in, I believe they're located in California. Good to be a long ways away, And they were selling stock on that thing.
They were just a hoax, you mean?
Yes, just a hoax.
Sure.
Just a hoax.
So I suppose that's why that lake is so deep on each side, that's where the marl was dug out.
Is that what made the bridge?
No, what Audley took out of it and sold for the farmers around here. He sold that for 50 years. That's how he got acquainted with Ellen. He was from Swan Lake down here, and he got acquainted with Ellen, digging that out. He married my sister, and he dug marl there. He had a big high pole and a bucket run on a cable. He dug that out.
Now, what years would this have been?
That had been in the years of about 25, 26, 27.
And then this California hoax, the
That was
scheme.
before that.
That was before.
That was probably about the years of 1900 or 1900 to 1910.
Turn of the century time again.
Yes.
Somebody was making some money on
Oh,
it.
they
huh?
Gosh, I guess so.
They swindled people out of a lot of money. And there wasn't such a building there, but on their brochures that they put out was some enormous big buildings with the smoke drifting off in a smokestack that went up in the air 1,500 feet, and it was beautiful looking sight. And I've seen my father-in-law used to keep those and just laugh about it. See how people made money out of the lake that took money falsely out of people. It wasn't at the lake at all.
Well, I've got a few loose ends here that we kind of missed over, and then I want to ask you more about the house we're sitting in today, you know, how a fellow from Germany came over. Let's see, one of the things was we were talking about wildlife. How about what's known as canids or fox and coyotes? Have their numbers gone up or down over the years?
Well, the one of the fox I've got around here, I don't think that the fox are about as thick as they ever were. But we don't have anything left in this country in the line of quail or prairie chickens or anything because we got so many fox. You just pick up everything. Now, a year ago, there was some nice little covey of quails around here. But just as soon as they began to whistle, each day there was less whistling. And the fox are so tame, they'll come right up the lane, right up through my buildings here.
You see them quite often then?
Well, I don't see them so often, but people who are listening here said, there goes the fox.
And what about coyotes then?
We don't have many coyotes right around here now. There's coyotes in the country, I guess.
And Don, you were saying when the tape was off that you think that coyotes commonly get shot during deer season, and probably fox
I've
too.
seen some that have been shot, and the boys see them in the wild.
Yeah.
I saw one across the road, about a quarter mile from my house this last fall, in the daytime.
Well, Larry Reef that raised sheep over west of me here about 3 miles had a big time with them a few years ago. They decimated his sheep very much.
Do you remember the year approximately, Ben, when you saw the last group of prairie chickens around here? When do you think they pretty much left?
Oh, probably about 1905, 6, 7.
Again, around just shortly after the turn of the century then again.
Yeah, I used to have some uncles that came here and used to hunt around this country. I used to go with them occasionally on the hunting spree. John Thompson, Tim Thompson, Albert Jackson, Dowd.
A couple Norwegians in there with the Scotch and Irish. Sounds like
But they married into the family.
And so
They had hunting lodge of their own around here.
and they were hunting prairie chickens. I was with them and they shot some prairie chickens. But it wasn't long after that till I put in more prairie chickens.
Where were the prairie chickens found when they were around here? Were they mostly around the marshes and that
Well,
kind of
out in the fields quite a
out in
lot.
the fields? So was it pretty much prairie at that time? Then you still had some grasses,
Just grass fields.
grass fields.
And those raising hay and stuff.
I see.
Most of this land was forested before it was.
Well, this was all forested when my father came in here.
Oh yeah,
My father came in here and
cleared the land.
cleared the land, grubbed out the trees,
Yeah.
dug around the roots and cut off the roots and tipped them over and worked them up and
Wow, that must have been hard work.
he cleared all this land in through here, built all these buildings. Now I have hard work to keep them painted up, and then with some, let alone build them. So there must have been more money in the country in those days. Although I used to have records of his selling pigs and sell his pigs off for 5 and 6 cents a pound in those years. But yet he had money to have a house like this. And I was brought up on bedtime stories of what this house cost. And of course that was 100 years ago this year.
So the house was built in 1886.
Yes. And it was a preposterous amount of money he put out to build this house. It cost him all told $2,600.
Now, okay, why don't we get into that? When the tape was off, you had mentioned that a fellow from Germany came over here, and if you could just take off on that story that you told
My
us.
father was wondering who he'd get to put up the house, and he was talking about building the house, and some of his German neighbors said that they had an uncle that lived in Germany that would like to make a trip to America.
Now, do you remember hearing where in Germany he came from?
No, I don't remember. I think I heard at the time
Yeah.
what the city came from, but I couldn't say for sure. But it was one of the harbors there in the way. He worked all he could at, and when he wasn't a shipbuilder, he was a house carpenter.
Okay.
But he wanted to come to America, so my father gave in the price, but he had to pay him a stupendous sum of $1.25 a day to build this house, and which was an unheard of price. Nobody ever got, even the good carpenters around here were only getting $1. But because he was shipbuilder, my father took the chance.
He's probably quite a craftsman.
Yes.
The house certainly seems solid now.
You can go up in the attics. I can take you up there today, and those diagonal cuts in the and where the hip roof comes together, they're cut so perfect that they go over it.
That's something.
It's just marvelous.
So now he came over from Germany in the spring. He said it was May, I think.
I think he started the house in May, and then he had to go back along in the full part of September because his visa run out or whatever it was, and he had to leave before he got the house quite done. And
But he pretty much got it done in that period of, what is that, about 4 months or so?
yes, and he had good lumber to work with. Of course, it was full. In those days, was 2 or 4 was 2 by 4. And 6 by 6 was 6 by 6, and it was unplaned lumber for that. But the siding was painted on one side, and the siding was all tongue and grooved.
Where did the lumber come from?
Well, it came from the north, but I don't know just where in the north. It's in northern woods.
But you got it probably, what, at a local lumber yard someplace?
I think they did. I don't know where. I don't know. It's just where he got the lumber from. I took it to a lumber yard.
Did he have anybody helping him when he built the house, or did he pretty much do it all alone?
This carpenter did it pretty much all alone.
The fellow from Germany?
Yes, but when my father wasn't occupied in the fields, he helped him, and he just did some of the rough work for him.
As far as the foundation goes, did he just gather up glacial stones in the fields?
Yes, he did that, but somebody helped him put up the foundation in the house. The house had a very good foundation. As you see by the brick today, the brick is never cracked on the main part of the house
Really
at all.
nice.
Where did the brick come from?
Came from Portage.
That's the Portage cream brick, it's known as it.
Yes.
Who dug the cellar then, Ben? Was that,
My father and my 2 brothers.
and that was all prepared, or that was probably ready when he came from Germany, he could just start
Well,
building?
no, the foundation was in when he came from Germany.
Oh, I see.
The foundation had been built the year before. And I don't know who he got in for he never told me too much about who built the foundation. But I do remember a bedtime story he used to tell me about when they were digging the house out the year before, and my 2 brothers were helping him, that they ran across a little gopher that was down. He was under the front part of the house now, and he was asleep in the nest there, and they picked out the nest of the little gopher, saw him asleep in it, and they followed him and played with him quite a lot, and my brothers did too. They thought that was quite a thing, and they set him out on a board in the sunshine, and pretty soon he was out running around, and of course I was very much interested in what became of the gopher, but told him the story that he lived happily ever after. I can't understand the cat caught it.
You said your father, though, the German built the house, but your father built the rest of the buildings here, the barn and the outbuildings.
Well, yes, my father built a lot of them, and the old barn was built out of lumber that the logs were cut way up near in London on the Road River,
Oh, yeah.
floated down to lakes down Oshkosh here, and slowed there, and then rafted up the Fox River up to Marquette on the south side of Buckway Lake. And my father and my grandfather took auction team and went through it this time of year in the wintertime and hauled all that barn home, entire shingles and everything from Marquette out here.
Was that, do you remember if that was pine mostly, big white pine?
Oh, yeah, white pine. And those timbers in there, they're 30 feet long and not spiced. 30 feet long timbers.
You told us a story again when the tape wasn't going about how level and how true the carpenter was able to get the rooms. You said it was maybe a quarter of an inch off or something,
They
from
weren't,
corner to corner.
Not more than a quarter of an inch off. Maybe get corner to corner.
Right.
And
Isn't that
and
something?
the doors are hung so straight that any part of the downstairs of the house here, you could stand the door at any place and it will not open or shut. Stay right there when you put it.
He was really a craftsman,
Oh, yes,
wasn't he?
My father was always very glad he got it.
Sounds like he was worth that extra.
But he kept him another month, they finished the upstairs. Because the upstairs, he had to get other carpenters to finish that, and the doors upstairs.
Understood.
If you unlock them, they're swing. They're open, if you put them open, they'll swing shut on you.
So your father figured it was worth that extra quarter an hour.
Oh, yes, very much
For
so.
a German craftsman.
He
Yeah.
was very happy about paying the extra quarter an hour.
You bet. Well,
And the old gentleman's name was Flegel.
what was his name?
Flegel.
Do you know how that's spelled?
Well, I suppose I spelled, Flegel today, F-L-A-G-E-L.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember his first name?
No, I don't.
Okay. Okay. And how old a man was he when he built the house, the German fellow?
I took it that he was middle-aged, or a little past middle-aged.
And this was in 1886, so he may have been born, say, in the 1830s, probably, something like
I
that.
never run my father down on this exactly how old
No,
he was.
this is all kind of shooting in the dark, but... And then you, Ben, were born in 1893, is that right?
I was born right in this house.
So 7 years after the house was constructed. One other animal that I didn't ask you about was bobcats. Did you ever see bobcats here?
I never seen bobcats. I've heard them scream. They told me they would scream, and still rumors of bobcats on the observatory hill over here. But I never seen them. And I've had my cats come up all torn to pieces, and I'm told by my neighbors that it was bobcats that killed them. Put them to bed if they eventually died. I've had my house cats come up. I've heard them yelling out in the fields here. They laid themselves in the house to die, and because of the bobcat.
You heard a scream or two out in the marsh too, though, when our swamp brother, wonder what it was. Wonder if it could have been a bobcat. Within the last few years.
Well, just a couple of years ago that there was something howling up here in this woods here. Most unearthly noise I ever heard. I don't know what it was. But we do have the panther and stuff drift down from the north woods that come down this country occasionally. Yeah.
You ever had bears that drifted down?
I've heard of bears being in here, but I never saw one.
Does anybody else have any other questions or anything that anybody can think of that I haven't covered or missed?
I was going to tell you a little bit more about the house.
There was renters then while your father-in-law, Mr. McGrath, owned the house. He had another house of his own.
Yes, he had a big house down in the island on the marsh.
How on the island on the marsh? How far away would that have been from this?
80 rods.
About 80 rods from that. And who built that house that he lived in?
His father.
His father built that. Okay, then while he owned this other house that we're talking about that's near the marker, he must have rented that out. Is that
yes,
right?
Yes, he did. He rented it out. And before I married my wife, the people by the name of Otto lived there, Johnny Otto. And my wife used to talk to us about the Ottos. But when I lived there, one of the renters was I can't think of the name right now.
That's okay.
But anyway, he worked for me, and Roy Barton was the man's name.
Roy Barton, and he rented the house from your father-in-law.
Okay. From my father-in-law.
Right.
And he worked for us by the day, son. But eventually moved out.
What were you told? Who built the house that your father-in-law was renting? What stories did you hear about it?
Well, as I was trying to tell you, that I don't know whether old Mr. Hugh McGuinn built it or whether it was built before his day. But I understood that he lived there. And
Hugh McGuinn, then.
And I believe, if I remember right, I can't remember for sure, but I think his wife was an Ennis.
His wife was an Ennis. But you never heard anybody back then relate that house to the Muirs. I mean, that was never talked about as a Muir house.
I don't think that was ever Muir. But when John Muir drew the sketch of Fountain Lake, he drew it from just back of that house, standing on the hill just back of that house, between that house and overlooking the lake.
Okay.
That is the way the lake looks from that drawing.
At that time, he was referring to the viewpoint or the vantage point from what was known as the Bur Oak Shanty, which was a very crude little log lean-to that they put up just, that first season to get them through the weather until they built the framed house.
I wouldn't say that John Muir never lived at that house, but he didn't live there when my father-in-law knew him as a young man.
Right.
He was a young man getting his education. He was walking to Madison to get his education in those days.
Can you describe the house to me, the upright house with the wings and the one that sat over by the monument, where the monument now is? Can you?
Yes, it wasn't a very big house. I presume the upright wasn't more than probably 18 by 20. And the wings
2 stories then in the upright?
Yes.
Yeah, 2 stories.
2 stories in the upright, but the wings were just 1 story. And they ran out maybe 16 feet out each side. And they had bedrooms and things like that.
Were they both the wings bedrooms then, both of them?
I don't remember for sure what they were. I know the one bedroom was all wing.
Yeah.
One wing was all bedrooms. And I don't remember just what the other was, but...
Do you remember if the wings had little lofts, sleeping lofts in them?
I don't recall that they did.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
I think that the upright was the only one that...
Was there a basement or a cellar underneath the upright?
Sort of one. It wasn't
A shallow cellar under the upright.
Shallow cellar. In those days they didn't, they just dug a big hole and then they had a cellarway that went down into this hole in the ground. They called that the cellar.
But there was nothing under the wings that would be dug?
No, they were just sitting on brick and stone after that.
Yeah.
But the upright had a foundation just squared around it, but no foundation that turned down 6 feet or anything like that. It was just a hole about 6 feet deep right in the middle of it.
And the house was never painted? It was just left to weather to an old gray?
Never had it painted on that I know of.
Right.
Didn't have any evidence of ever had it painted.
What was unusual about the house?
It had quite a lot of little scallops around the eaves.
Little scallops, trim boards that were all scalloped on the outside.
Scalloped and...
So along the peak, if you looked at the roof line, you'd see these scallops.
Along the peak of it, I think I'd have a few scallops on the ridge one too.
Only on the upright portion, or did the wings themselves, were they scalloped too?
I don't recall that they had anything on it.
Just the upright part. Okay. What else? What else do you remember about the house? Do you remember the floor plan at all of the upright portion?
No, I don't remember much about the upright part. There was several little rooms, and all the rooms were about maybe 10 feet square. So.
Do you remember anything about where the windows and doors were, the arrangement of those?
Yes, the windows, there's 2 front windows in the upright. I think we went in the door in the wings, and then went into the upright.
I see. And then if you picture these wings, going off to I imagine the main house or the upright portion ran, say, whatever, north and south.
It went, the main portion of it went east and west.
East and west, and then so the wings were going north and south opposite. If you looked at the roof gable lines,
If you stood on the road which runs north and south, and you looked at the house, the wings, one went off to the right and one went off to the left of the upright.
So the house was, what symmetrical means. It was perfectly symmetrical if you looked at it.
Yes.
The wings were in balance with the...
Yes.
There was something else here I was going to ask you. All right, where, in terms of you said you entered through the doors of the wings into the upright portion.
I remember it. I wouldn't be sure now.
Okay.
Whether there was any wings the upright from outside or not.
To the best of your recollection. Did both wings have doors? Do you think? Both wings had doors. Where would the doors have been located on the wings? Were they on the long wall, on the side walls, or were they on the gable, the short wall?
They were on they were quite close to the upright. Quite close to the upright.
They were quite close to the upright.
Yeah. I think, as I remember, we stepped in on the wing and then turned and went into the upright. From the front, and I think similar from the back, and I don't remember whether it was just one door going into the upright or not.
So the wings, you said the wings were probably, 16 feet long. Were they square or were they rectangular?
Rectangular.
Okay, so if they were 16 feet on the long wall, what do you think they were on the short wall?
Probably 10 or 12 feet.
10 or 12. And then on that 10 or 12 foot wall, was there any doors or windows?
Yes, there was windows along the front and the south side too. Little windows with little squares of panes on them. Probably these panes would be about 8 by 10 squares.
Okay, and were both wings identical in terms of where the windows and doors were?
As I remember, quite similar.
But the doors were definitely on the 16-foot wall. They were on the long wall rather than the short wall.
And then we going into the back of that. We went into the back of there and turned and went into the upright part. So going into the wing first. But I wouldn't be too sure. I don't remember. Although I helped fix up the house and repair it a little bit, I don't remember too much about it. I didn't do much to it.
Yeah.
Never done too much to it because we weren't getting any rent out of it to speak of. Maybe a couple of dollars a month or something like that. It was very nominal rent.
But to the best of your memory, Ben, you would say that, I'm still puzzled a little bit about these doors, you would say the doors were on the longest wall of those wings.
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell me, did the wings have chimneys on them?
I think the south wing did. I don't know.
The south wing had
I don't
a
remember.
chimney.
I don't remember whether the north wing had any chimney.
Okay. And then the upright portion of the house had one chimney or
Right
two?
in the middle.
Just right in the middle had one.
A little brick chimney.
Okay.
A little short chimney. Went out through the roof.
Okay. Any other distinguishing features about that house that might help me?
No.
Can you think of at all?
I don't remember.
Was it a well-made house?
For that time, yes, probably was been considered to be well made. Or fairly well made. It wasn't anything, but it was wind would blow right through it. And when I knew it, I don't think there was any. I don't think there was any sheeting under the clapboards. I think they were just nailed to the study.
Were there any landscape features that, in other words, in terms of a garden or lilac plantings? Or
there was, yes, there were lilies out in the front yard and lilacs planted around somewhat. But, and there was a well out there. I think it was out just east of the house. But the sheds and parts of that were almost nil, if not entirely gone when I first knew it.
So there wasn't a barn accompanying that building, but there may have been like little outbuilding sheds or whatever.
There were some sheds out there of some kind. But they were all tumbled down.
Okay, now we know that this house sat very near where the granite marker is at the park.
Very
dedicating
close to
John Muir. So if we were on County Trunk F and we were looking directly at the marker, what would we see of that house in the wings?
Right back of the marker.
Okay, back of the marker and
a little bit to the left.
A little bit to the left, and where were the wings? How did it line up? Were we looking directly at the face of the upright, or was that to our side? Was the side of the upright?
We were looking at the west end of the upright. The upright ran east and west.
And how does that road run?
Runs north and south.
North and south. I see. So then we would have seen
Twice in north south. I wouldn't say it ran exactly north south.
So really, we would have seen the long walls of the wings then directly from the road if we're looking face on.
I would say that the wings were 14, 16 feet running out each side of the upright.
Were they finished in the same roofing material as far as shingles, or was there a contrast between? They were the same.
Almost devoid of shingles when I knew it.
It was rotting away by then. It was already going into
Shingles
roots.
were blowing off.
What year would that have been again, Ben?
From 20 to 24.
Yeah, 20 to 24. So the house really met its demise just shortly after that, within the next 4 years or whatever. And the last time you remember the house, when you left for Waukesha, as you mentioned, was the house occupied or not?
I don't know whether it was occupied just at that time or not. It was occupied on and off by transients.
Just people that would kind of just come along and squat there.
Yes. And Roy Barton was probably living in it about that time, but it wasn't in such shape as to demand any amount of rent from it or anything like that. And his they could get by with it, they could live in it. That's about the size of charging for rent.
Do you remember ever your father-in-law who knew the Muirs ever telling you what happened to the Muir house that was at Fountain Lake? Did he ever mention it burned down or anything?
It seems to me that he did tell me that it burned down.
Right, I think it did.
I think that's what it was. My father-in-law had always wanted to go west with the Galloways and all those people that were moving to the highway at the time, but he couldn't leave to go. But his brother John, that eventually settled up here where the Press brothers live on the square brick house up here on F now. He went out to Iowa, and he only stayed 4 years.
Why did he return?
He came back, and I was having a terrible drought in those years when he was out. And they weren't raising many crops because it was so dry. And then, too, in the town they settled in, or where they settled, a lot of people were drinking quite heavy, and his wife, who was a whitehead by marriage.
Was she related to the whitehead that was a blacksmith around? Yeah, okay.
And she was concerned that he might get to drinking out there, and so she advised him to come back. They weren't making out anyway, and the neighbors used to. I've heard him say this myself. Johnny, when you were out in Iowa, near Fort Dodge Highway, when the land was so good as you tell about, why didn't you stay out there? Well, he says that we had such a drought. He says that I had to drive my cattle through 3 creeks and a river to get to the water. And it was almost true. It was almost literally true. The creeks did dry up, and the river only wasn't running. It just had pools in it. And they were just drought out. And so they moved back, and they bought this place called the Lincoln place. And that's been in the John McCrest family ever since. And his great-grandsons now, the McCrest brothers, twins, run the place now very successfully. It was a nice farm. And he was a good farmer too. He was a good farmer.
You know, before I was asking you when the tape was off about Jessie Duncan, I'd like to have you tell me that story again about, how Jessie never married, but she did adopt 2
Yes, she adopted
children.
a boy and a girl.
And the girl's name was Annie Duncan.
Annie Duncan. And,
Do you know where she came from, Annie? Where they got her?
No, she was a state school girl. I don't know what.
State school girl.
I don't know. But anyway, the boy's name, he also went by the name of Waite. Frank Waite.
Frank Waite.
Yes.
You don't know where he came from?
No, I think he was an orphan or a state school boy too. But anyway, she took those 2 in, and Annie Duncan was a cripple.
Oh, she was.
She could just barely walk. She walked with 2 canes, and they did the work for her, and she managed. She got around and did a lot of work, even though she was crippled. And
Jessie Duncan, you said, was quite a wealthy woman, so she was able to take care of her pretty well.
Yes. She, as people used to say, she had a mortgage on half the township of Buffalo.
Where'd she get her money?
Yeah.
Well, she was frugal, and they saved every dollar they got, and their parents were frugal too. And they were all Scotch people too, and she talked very Scotchy. She talked very, 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 very deep brogue. I mean, not quite so much so as my father-in-law, because my father-in-law stayed with his father and mother, and he didn't get to speaking never went to school much, so he never got to speaking the vocabulary of America. He spoke the old Scotch dialect, and when he got another Scotchman to talk with him, they got into the old Scotch talk. I could follow that conversation.
Like another language.
Almost like another language. And I remember him coming up to see my son, my little boy, when he was sick one time. And the little boy lay in his cradle. And he looked at the cradle, and he made the remark as he turned to go out of the room. He says, "I cannot follow the weaker and the barren."
Now, what he said?
No, but he said, "I cannot follow the weaker and the barren. I cannot stand to look upon the little crying child."
No, I would never understand that.
No.
No.
Well, now you see how how foreign that is to
Yes.
to our English.
Absolutely.
But when he got talking with his other chums that were from Scotland, they could talk a dialect that I couldn't understand.
Now, Ben, you mentioned again earlier, while the tape was off, that you seem to always draw Annie Duncan's name at these, what was it, some kind of get-togethers when you were, before you were married, parties and things. Tell me that story again, and
Well, there's a lot of matchmakers in the country, but maybe there is today yet, but they also had me lined up with drawing Annie Duncan's name, and they did so much so that they kind of soured me. And
they thought you should marry money, though, didn't they?
yes, I suppose they did.
Yeah.
But I wanted to do my own choosing. And so I chose the Scotch girl down in the marsh.
Turned out to be your wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was very happy, and I guess she also was too, because she always speaks to this day. She says, "I'd like to go back and live my happy home."
Tell me about that now. Why is she in the nursing home today?
Well, she, her mother, in her later years, went off mentally, the last few years, and her sister did the same thing.
Now, her maiden name was McGrath, right?
Yes, McGrath. And her mother's name was Larson, L-A-R-S-E-N.
A Norwegian or a Swede, then?
Danish.
Well, she was Danish, okay.
S-E-N is very, very strictly Danish.
Okay,
Well, don't spell a Dane's name S-O-N. They'll
Okay.
take a cut at you.
Okay.
And so when she got to, now she had that stove there, and she would go on that electric stove with the match trying to get it to burn. She says, "Ben, I can't get this stove to burn." "What is wrong?" She says, "I can't get it to burn." I look in the oven here, she'd have some kindling wood in the oven. And one day she set her dress apart, and I was right here to
Good thing you were.
and then she'd put on some meat to fry on the stove, and she'd go off in the other room and start to run a vacuum cleaner or something, and vacuum the carpet. She vacuumed the carpets about every day, or twice a day maybe, in the latter years, and she didn't use any common sense in vacuuming, and she needed to burn. And I would be out the barn, and I'd be roaming out, going on the house. I'd come up here, this room would be just black and smoke, and grease would be burning on the stove. All I did was egg fire.
You mentioned, too, before that she kind of would return to her childhood and about the threshers, if you want.
Yeah, she would, I remember two different times that I'd hear her wake up toward morning and hear her downstairs here. I'd come down, she'd have a big pan of potatoes all filled, and have them on the stove cooking. Have the stove, they were all stretched out here, have it set for as many people around as she could get. And well, we were going to have the thrashers thing, and all that, to get rid of things. And I said, "Mary, we don't thrash anymore. We combine. We don't have thrashers anymore." And I'd get her to go back to bed again. In a couple of hours, she'd be up doing the same thing again.
Are you able to get over and visit with her quite a bit then?
No, I don't. It's just like going to funeral to me.
Oh, it's pretty hard on you, I'm
yes.
sure.
And I go down occasionally, but I don't make it more than about, so I say about once a month.
Yeah.
I get to see her out very often, because it's just breaks my heart.
It's got to be hard on you. You know, Ben, you mentioned on a little nicer topic, you mentioned old-fashioned bean picks, you know. I don't know anything about those. What?
Well, in the early day, we used to raise a lot of white beans in the field. And we used to have bean picks and a lot of get-togethers in the country. And
neighborliness and all that.
And
Nice.
all the year, I remember, we used to even have cornhusk beans here. And we'd get together in the wintertime, all sit around the table and pick our white beans. And when my cousin came along and invented the electric eye, and since the electric eye has been invented, beans are all picked with electric eyes.
So they can detect those bad beans now with that electric eye.
Yes, that's right. But we used to have nice get-togethers, and then folks would put on lunch at midnight or at that time.
Now, you know, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's what
Henry Worthington, your grandfather, I wanted to ask you about. He was really a skilled master when it came to hewing logs.
Yes, he was very good at that. And he had two skills. he was the first man to ever introduce molasses in this country, sorghum. He said back east and got seeds from amazing sorghum. And he put the first sorghum in, and he finally got an evaporator, and he went around the country making sorghum. Got the neighbors to make sorghum.
But he would hew out these logs for other people, is that right?
He would go on. If they were going to build a log house, especially if they wanted the foundation, started nice square, he would hew out those logs, and if they could get big holes, they called him to hew out things and get it, except the job done. Because he had a broad axe and the heads, he would put them on. He would make them 4 square.
He'd hew all 4 sides?
Yes,
I see.
if they wanted it.
If they wanted it, yeah.
And then there's going up, if they wanted just 2 sides so they fit together, or 3 sides fit together, he'd do them that way too. But,
where did he learn his trade, his skill like that?
Well, I guess he learned it in York State, as he called it. New York.
Back in New York. You think he learned it from his father?
Probably so.
Probably so.
They were all quite handy with tools.
That's interesting. What type of wood did he mostly hew? Was it mostly pine then?
No,
all oak. So it was local oak then, rather than coming down the river.
We didn't have hardly any white pines growing this year.
No, right.
It was most all oak.
That had to be a lot of work, this big oak timbers.
30 feet long he was doing?
All along the house or a barn was that they were building.
And some of those big timbers you say were 30 feet long or so. Yeah.
Some of them, but that was an exceptional log house that was 30 feet long.
Was that most of the log houses then were quite a bit smaller than that?
Yes, because it was only for a public building or something like that.
Oh, barn, right?
Yes, a lot of the barn was 30 feet long.
Do you remember many log barns in your area?
No, I don't remember too many of the log barns. I remember some of them. But the log barns were generally a combination of log and straw stack. You stack the straw right next to the barn so that the straw would keep the barn warm too.
Oh.
Especially on the west side, and then weight it down so that it couldn't go away. And the straw stack would keep the barn warm.
Do you ever remember seeing any roofs, either on barns or on houses, that were just piled straw?
Oh yes. Yes, I've had them myself.
They weren't thatched, but they were just loosely piled.
Just a pile of straw.
How did they work? Did they keep the weather out pretty well?
And I've even put them up that way and put up the shed that way and put it up loose. And then when the thrashing machine came, I thrash right over it. Cover that straw right over. And then if any fell through the logs, and we'd rake that out and make it face in there, put our stock in. And I've had them just sheltered that way myself.
Do you remember quite a few old log houses in the area, though?
Oh, I remember some. I wouldn't say quite a few.
Were there more framed houses, early framed houses?
There were framing houses in my day.
Do you remember ever seeing any of these, what's known as fachwerk construction buildings that are half-timbered German buildings? They might have a structure of hewn timbers, and then in between that it's filled with either mud or brick. Remember seeing those kind of buildings?
Yeah, I just saw one barn. It was what they call grout.
Yeah, a grouted barn.
Grouted barn.
Is that in the area somewhere?
No, it was down next door neighbor here.
And it's gone now?
Oh yes, long since gone.
Okay. I'd just like to cover just a little bit more about the naming of Fountain Lake. Why is it called Ennis Lake these days?
Well, as I understand, the Ennis family got together and had their name changed from Fountain Lake.
Was that quite a while ago that they did that?
Yes, I was just 20 years ago.
But don't you think it makes much more sense to call it Fountain Lake after how it was originally named after the springs?
Very much so, because he was a famous man, world famous man, and he's known the world over practically as a good man. And I think that as long as he named it Fountain Lake, it should be Fountain Lake.
You know, our culture, speaking now on the national level, always seems to identify John Muir with California, with Alaska, with his...
He went to California, of course. He was instrumental in getting
The national parks, and Yosemite National Park.
Yes, and all that. He worked hard for that, and he was very instrumental in that. I understand that Yosemite they'd started in building a lot, and they had designs on that waterfall for the water park, and he put a hiatus to that.
But don't you think it's time that Wisconsin, recognizes him more on a national and cultural level?
Much more than they have.
Yes.
Very much more than they have.
Yeah.
Because the other part of the nations are recognizing him far more than we are here, I think, in Wisconsin.
Right here in Buffalo Township, it seems that the recognition that he's had in Wisconsin is very much at a localized level.
Yes.
And it should be probably, what I'm trying to do then is put these places on the National Register of Historic Sites or places.
I wish that the state would take over this park down here.
How are they maintaining the park these days in
I guess
Marquette County?
Marquette County is doing it, just out of their own.
But it's the only park, county park in Marquette
I
County.
think it is.
In your opinion, are they doing an adequate job of maintaining the park?
Well, with what they're doing, I think they're doing fine.
They probably don't have a lot to spend on it and maintain it.
They don't have too much. I'm glad to see what they're doing, what they are. But I wish it was taken up and even bigger and better. Because I think that the Muir main demands it.
The Ennis's, though, are quite a bit different type of people than the Muirs, I understand. Quite a bit different.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I won't, okay. Well, let's see. Anything else? Ellen, you think of it?
I recall, did you ask about the different fires? And I remember there were 2 different fires. I wonder if did you mention that? Remember, didn't someone say something about 2 different fires? Something about the Ennis house burning down, that they had a car flood there.
the Sam Ennis
Did you ever
house.
hear that story?
Sam Ennis house burned down just about, almost 40 years ago now. But I was at that part of that night in the moon.
Oh, you were there?
Yes.
Oh, do you know about that, Eric, or is that something you need to cover? It seemed like you remember that one article had about 2 different fires.
Looking for that article. So the Sam Ennis house burned then also.
But you were there that night.
Yes, I was there.
Do you want to go over that?
Yeah.
Yes, we had 2 minute telephones that day, and when you ring 10 short rings, that meant that it was an emergency. So everybody went, said the Sam Ennis house was on fire. So we jumped in the car and went right down, and I didn't get there in time to get in the house, but the house was burning quite heavily, and there were chimneys to the nice house, and the family was there, but the man of the house wasn't home. I don't know why he wasn't home at that night, but anyway, we didn't go in, and the neighbors were all standing around there, and they were saying that Florence, the daughter-in-law, had a lot of fruit, and there was an outside cellarway going into the cellar, and Ed Rude down here says, let's go down and carry out a lot of that fruit, and little Rubishaw was there. He says, no, don't you go into that cellar. He says, there's a big fire above there, and he says,
Falling timbers and everything.
You might get trapped in that cellar. Well, they talked about it quite a while, and finally someone said, well, we could have had that stuff all pretty well carried out of the cellar if we'd have gone in it right away. And just as he said that, the chimney buckled and it went crash, tear down into that, all that brick, tons of brick.
But that was where the trailer house is today, is that correct?
Yes. And Bill Rubishaw says, I'll see where we'd have been if we'd have all been down in that cellar. But there's tons of brick coming down.
Now the original barn is still sitting there on that site, isn't it? That's a nice old barn. That's across the road on Gillette Drive from the Muir site, from the park.
Yeah, it's on the north side of the road, and the house is on the north side.
What do you remember about that?